As Manifest Destiny continued, the West began to gradually develop towns, telegraph lines, and transportation around the entire western coast. Due to sheer distance, though, this side of the country still remained isolated from the East Coast. Following the Civil War, a group of four wealthy merchants founded the Central Pacific Railroad Company in order to attempt to create a railroad spanning the continent, or a transcontinental railroad. In 1862, the Pacific Railway Act was passed in order to allow the Central Pacific Railroad Company and the Union Pacific Railroad Company to begin construction upon a railroad that would span from the Missouri River to the Pacific Ocean. Unfortunately, the Civil War and the California Gold Rush had resulted in a shortage of manual laborers in the United States, and the Central Pacific Company and the Union Pacific Company began to rely upon immigrant labor from China and Ireland. But many of the men who came to America seeking a job, new opportunities, or to escape famine or poverty found that these jobs were not the dreams that they were advertised to be. Overall, Chinese and Irish immigrant railroad workers were mostly negatively impacted by westward expansion and Manifest Destiny, due to widespread negative social stigmas resulting in an unequal treatment by their employers and white American colleagues. A major barrier for these workers was the rampant racism. Although the Chinese made up 80% of the workforce on the Central Pacific Company, they still received lower wages than their white counterparts, even though they did the same work. In addition to the lower pay, the Chinese men were not furnished with shelter or food. They were expected by their employers to have their own tents, to buy and cook their own food, while these amenities were all provided to white railway workers. However, purchasing their own food led to healthier eating habits for the Chinese. While the whites were fed beef and potatoes, the Chinese ate fish, meat, vegetables, and fruit. Additionally, their habit of almost exclusively drinking tea led to them boiling their water and escaping from many of the diseases that plagued the Irish and white workers. As many Chinese came to the United States in order to escape poverty, this could be seen as a step up from their previous lives in China. However, this wasn't necessarily true for everyone. As a Chinese immigrant recalls, suffering pangs of hunger, many of the Chinese died from an epidemic. Graves dotted the landscape, and the sight sent chills up and down my spine. Chinese bodies flew from the cave as if shot from a cannon. Blood and flesh were mixed in a horrible mess. On this occasion, about 10 or 20 workers were killed. In addition to racism, working on the railroad was dangerous business for white men and immigrants. Working through the winter resulted in many workers becoming frostbitten, and a further portion dying to avalanches. Many immigrants slept in the tunnels they excavated in the mountains, leading to more deaths from cave-ins, exposure, and death. In the folk song Drill Ye Terriers Drill, a man named Jim Goff was described to have been blown a mile in the air due to a premature blast. However, when payday came, he was short $1 due to the time that he spent in the air, a cruel measure employed by his superior in order to save on money. In the end, the Finnish Transcontinental Railroad finished construction in 1869, with the two companies meeting at Promontory Point, Utah. The railroad reduced the time taken traveling from one coast to another from 4 months to just 10 days. The Transcontinental Railroad connected the East and West, but to what cause? Was this new line worth the labor and suffering of thousands of immigrants?